Greetings, everyone. This is your hostess, Zoe Smith, author of The COVID Code, My Life in the Thrill Kill Medical Cult. A couple of weeks ago, I did a special, a medical surveillance part 1. And this week, we're going to do medical surveillance part 2, tracking the unvaccinated. So thank you for being here and escaping the cult with me. Let me know if you're into this format of reading / sharing the sources, kind of Last American Vagabond style, which is actually this article is posted there and this video may also be posted there. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So medical surveillance part 2, tracking the unvaccinated. Part 1 of medical surveillance revealed how contact tracing evolved into databases called real-time AI ecosystems. The data stored in these ecosystems ranges from medical records to genomic sequences that were largely collected using COVID-19 PCR tests. Health privacy laws were revised to enable an alarming amount of data sharing with public and private intelligence agencies for military operations. Using the COVID-19 scamdemic as a front, the military worked with so-called health authorities to weaponize COVID-19 statistics to target non-compliant or undesirable groups with mRNA vaccines, ventilators, and remdesivir. In other words, it was a military operation that utilized covertly collected private medical data and genetic data to deploy bioweapons. Targets were acquired using AI-generated predictive behavior models provided by government intelligence agencies like Palantir. If that sounds disturbing to you, keep reading, because that was just a warm-up. The delayed reaction that enabled the illusion of the pandemic of the unvaccinated. You all remember
this is being
the
called
pandemic of the unvaccinated?
Unvaccinated.
This is becoming a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
A pandemic of the unvaccinated.
This is an epidemic that's occurring in the unvaccinated.
We're seeing a pandemic among the unvaccinated.
This is becoming a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
Pandemic of...
We remember, we were all there. As contact tracing phased into the background and the genome collection method, known as PCR testing, was normalized, one more important piece of data needed to be collected: vaccination status. The Mockingbird media foreshadowed that vaccination status must be made public information because during a public health emergency, everyone has a right to know their risk. Soon, everyone would need to have a COVID-19 shot to travel, work, go to school, and even participate in society. All this would inevitably lead to a vaccine passport. Yet there was no official way to track who was vaccinated in the healthcare industry. The CDC and Medicare, CMS, allowed new codes for tracking vaccination status that would go live on April 1st, 2022. The update occurred 2 years to the day the COVID-19 diagnosis code went live. April Fools. This time, the emergency update was for the purposes of tracking vaccination status. It just wasn't an emergency during the most aggressive portion of the vaccine campaign, the part where everyone had to get the shot in order for society to come out of lockdown and go back to normal. At any point during 2021, the CDC, CMS, or AMA could stop the presses and do another emergency update to introduce a new code for vaccination status, or for adverse events, for that matter. They did not. I'm going to share a little bit of this video with you, which just shows how they planned it. You don't really need to hear the guy. He talks real slow, so I'm going to fast forward through it. This just gives you an idea of how long and the multiple layers of red tape they go through in order to publish a code, which was also true for COVID-19.
I can do the topic under immunization if that is all right. Let me move to that next. Let me display it. This is in your topic packet on page 194.
So suddenly they have to track who's not vaccinated.
Time of this pandemic with COVID-19, people have now been having immunizations for a number of months.
They admit they know people have been having vaccines for months, and they don't have a code to track this yet. They're just now having meetings. It says early implementation April 1st, but this was October 15th, 2021. And you can see September 14th, 15th was the date of this meeting. So many months they planned this. And clearly the point is to track vaccination status. It was almost as if the WHO or the DoD didn't want the healthcare industry to have a way to track vaccination compliance. The CDC continues to maintain a vaccine database, including individually identifiable information, but it is not available to the public. Vaccination status was surprisingly not officially tracked in the ICD-10 coding system for over a year, leaving doctors and hospital networks with their hands in the air. It effectively put all frontline healthcare workers in the dark regarding vaccination compliance during the year in which the world was supposed to reach the elusive number that provides herd immunity. Keeping the healthcare industry in the dark on this critical data point enabled the industry to target unvaccinated individuals for deadly COVID hospital protocols and artificially inflate the number of unvaccinated individuals to make it appear it was a pandemic of the unvaccinated. The movie Vaxxed 3, Authorized to Kill, does an excellent job detailing how hospital protocols worked out. You can watch it at vaxxed3.org. Hospitals all over America that willfully murdered their patients can claim innocence using plausible deniability as an excuse. COVID kickback money does not only reward hospitals for following orders, it also works to keep people quiet. For anyone who's just joining us, part one, this is the article that was published. This is the Substack version. It has the audio and video published there. It should also be on my website. So this is going to be part two of that article. So just so you can see the source material, this is Medicare talking about implementing the vaccination code. You can see February 4th, 2022 is when they're talking about that, planning it, and then the effective date is April 1st, 2022. And you'd have to go down here to see, this is Medicare Learning Network. So this is official CMS notes that you get. It's kind of official in the industry. So new ICD-10 codes reporting COVID-19 vaccination status. And here are the new codes. Z28310. I have a shirt with that code on it. It says can't vax this. And I believe there's probably quite a few of you guys out there watching this. These two are the codes for partially vaccinated or fully up to date on your COVID-19 vaccines. And there are no monetary associations with this code. Like normally there would be, you could assign that as a primary diagnosis and there'd be a DRG group and there would be financial incentives behind that. But there aren't for this one. It's just saying they want to track vaccination status. The only procedures they added were for actually giving the vaccines and for giving drugs. Just so you can see where the movie actually is, and it is for free. You do have to sign up and give your email. I know some people don't want to do that, but it is out there. Here's just the website for Vaxxed 3, Authorized to Kill, so you can see that it actually, it does exist, and it is for free, so it actually was a thing. Highly censored, though, so if you've never heard of it, this is where you can find it, or you can tell your friends to find it. It is free, but you do have to put in some information. I know some people don't want to do that. So just so you know about that. So now we're going to get into social determinants of health. Data mining for your passports is not just about vaccines. An emergency code update for a code with no monetary value assigned baffled the health information industry. There was a financial motive behind the COVID diagnosis, U07.1, because it unlocked CARES Act funding. Vaccination status codes are in a chapter titled Factors Influencing Health Status and Contact with Health Services. The industry trend in coding is not to spend time assigning them because there's no money in it. If there was a financial incentive behind tracking vaccination status, it wasn't immediately clear. If money isn't the motive, then what is? The Factors Influencing Health chapter is being rebranded Social Determinants of Health, or SDOH. More on that later. Examples of codes in this chapter are Z20.6, contact with and suspected exposure to human immunodeficiency virus, HIV, Z20822, contact with and suspected exposure to COVID-19, Z76.5, conscious simulation of illness or malingerer, Z87.890, personal history of sex reassignment, and Z63, other problems related to primary support group, including family circumstances. This one is often used for problems related to divorce. The biggest threat is that tracking vaccination status means sharing sensitive medical information with military and intelligence agencies without the person's knowledge or consent. Even Robert Malone, not a fan, said your vaccination status should be private in an opinion piece he published about the update. No less than 10 members of Congress brought concerns to the attention of the CDC over the unprecedented amount of personal data sharing before the Z codes were published. The CDC refused to answer. When a FOIA was sent to them by the Epoch Times, the response stated the CDC does not have access to vaccination status codes. As they tend to do, that was only a partial truth designed to misdirect people. The CDC has a vaccination tracking system called IIS that claims to be only population-level data. It specifies usage of vaccination data is for surveillance and target interventions. It would most certainly be a HIPAA violation, for example, for healthcare professionals to share patient info with non-HIPAA entities like the FBI for tracking purposes. Unquote. USA Fact Check. The official excuse from health agencies is that vaccination status is important to monitor because it's a risk factor for the patient and the provider. They claim individuals cannot be tracked because individually identifiable data must be removed before it is sent to the database. The CDC clearly doesn't want to tip you off about how easily your data can be re-identified. Along with the demand to collect statistics on all things COVID-related comes an interoperability initiative from Medicare. All that juicy data stored at each healthcare institution is useless from a public health perspective unless that information can be quickly and easily shared. That is what CMS's FHIR regulations are all about. Providers and healthcare networks alike must install APIs, application program interfaces, that enable data exchange between the provider and external entities. In other words, APIs allow different programs at different organizations to talk to each other. Data must also be shared with third-party software developers that supply the tech. Suppliers of APIs do not have to be HIPAA-covered entities, which opens the healthcare industry up to major privacy liabilities. What happens is if sensitive data is leaked through one of these APIs, the most disruptive data breaches are from third-party vendors that supply these APIs, according to a national security advisor for American Hospital Association. Data mining has been the trajectory of medical records since Obamacare went into effect, but now the personal lives of all Americans are up for sale. Alex Karp, the CEO of Palantir, a tech company that specializes in data mining, admits it himself. So, quote, can your vaccination status be accessed by federal health agencies? Yes. Can that information be identifiable? Absolutely, yes. Does that mean that you, as an individual, could be surveilled and or get caught in a forced vaccination dragnet or end up experiencing negative repercussions in other areas of your life due to your vaccination status? Probably, unquote. Let's go through the sources from that section. There's a whole bunch of them. Some of them are kind of interesting. So this is just so you can see what the Z codes are for the social determinants of health. And look, it's all about better outcomes because they're trying to decide for us better outcomes. So these SDOH things are conditions in the environments where people are born, live, learn, work, play, worship, and age that affects a wide range of health, functioning, and quality of life outcomes and risks. So basically, they can use any one of these things to target you and make a decision based on your quality of life. And that is why they are collecting this information. So you can see here the steps to collect the information, pretty self-explanatory. They ask you questions, they put it in your record at the facility where you're seen at, and then there's the codes to reflect all of them. Here's what they do with them in steps 4 and 5, which I found interesting here. So it says basically, once they get your social risk factors and unmet needs, so any one of those housing, worship, living, age-related things, that's going to inform your healthcare services and follow-up and discharge planning. It's also going to trigger referrals to social services that meet your needs, and it's going to and they're going to track referrals for social services. They're also going to share this information with social services providers and other insurers, like your health information. And look, disparities impact statement. So it's all about health equity here, which you're going to see that trending throughout this presentation. I wanted to show you this vaccine. Here we go. This is the CDC's IIS, Immunization Information Systems, IIS. So yes, they do have a vaccine database. It's kind of hard to navigate it. So I brought up one of the tabs. You have to go through and look for, there's a Immunization Information Systems annual report. So that's where I'm in here. And then they have all these maps. So this one is just 6 years old. Oops. This one is just 6 years, up to 6 years old. And it says in the fine print that all of this reporting is voluntary, but then you look further and it shows that it's not actually voluntary, that just getting a vaccine means they can send all this information on you. So you can see they want all of them to be yellow, or they want every state to be yellow. And there are some that aren't. So Louisiana, you're kicking it, you're kicking ass. Hawaii over here is doing pretty good. Some other states over here are slacking on their information sharing. This one is for adults. And look, so they've changed it. It's not the same for adults. There are more states in here that aren't sending their information. Whoops. So that's just their vaccine registry. So obviously they do. They collect lots and lots and lots of information. And what do they collect it for? Oh, target interventions. Okay, so this is NIH. And this is morbidity and mortality weekly report by CDC. Okay, so this is what they're tracking. County level COVID-19 vaccination coverage for social vulnerability. Oh, what is social vulnerability? Oh, those SDOH codes that they enacted that they're trying to use to target people. Okay, everything in here talks about COVID-19 has disproportionately affected racial and ethnic minority groups who are economically and socially disadvantaged. And it's all about vaccine equality and equity. All those words keep coming up. And there is this CDC Social Vulnerability Index. Check this out. Make this a little bigger and see that. Alrighty, so socioeconomic status, this is what they're tracking. So how much money you make if you have a job, how much education you have, if you've been to college or not. How old are you? Are you over 65? Apparently you're a target if you are. Are you under 17? Apparently you're a target if you are. Older than age 5 with a disability. So they want to know if you're disabled. They want to know if you have a single parent household. Apparently that makes you a target. Certain racial and ethnic groups who they deem a minority. Anyone who speaks English less than well, which reminds me very much of the eugenics programs that talked about targeting, what do they call them? Basically the dummies. That's, I forget their term for it, but that's essentially the modern term. Housing type and transportation. So if you live in a multi-unit structure, which is an apartment or a townhome, apparently that makes you a target. Mobile homes, so no trailer trash allowed. Anything with crowding, if you don't have a vehicle, if you live in group quarters. So apparently, like if you have a roommate, I guess that makes you a target because that makes you socially vulnerable somehow. So these are the things that they're using to target people, which I find disturbing. Maybe some of you also do too. So let's move on to the next. That's just HIPAA violation. It's just the actual definition if you want to look at that. This is just a citation of a fact check. But this shows some interesting information. I already covered part of this in medical surveillance part 1, so I won't recover it. But I cited this article twice because it has so much great information. Part 1, I covered the loopholes to re-identification of personal data. But moving on, so it says providers may disclose EHI without patient authorization when the data have been de-identified, but still permits re-identification by providers. So providers can still do it, and they have to share a limited data set, but they can still re-identify. So of course, this all missed vaccinations will be tracked. This is Dr. Mercola telling you that and citing it appropriately. CDC refuses to answer questions. We cover that a little bit later too. And look, he even comes out and says, end goal is a global database for the vaccine passport system. The administrative state, this is a quote here, the administrative state is busy building a vaccine passport system that will be active before most Americans are aware of what is being done to them. No one is going to knock on your door asking for your vaccine status because they already know. They don't need approval from Congress or the courts because we have given them the information through our healthcare providers. The CDC is the government organization tasked with tracking vaccination status on individuals. They already have the records as well as the updated booster information. They just need to tweak a definition here or there, or get President Biden to keep the COVID-19 public health emergency in place indefinitely, and the vaccine passports will be a fait accompli. This was written April 18th, 2023, and we're well on board for that. So this interoperability thing, this comes up in the Federal Register, so it will actually load. The Federal Register is a place for not just medical regulations, but all kinds of laws, and a lot of regulatory agencies will publish in there. So in the medical regulatory agency or field, this is like the source place to go for information. And you can find all the different iterations from when they started planning it to when they actually finalized it. So this is a rule. It looks like it was finalized. And you can see the date 12/16/2024. This is your TEFCA, which I had no idea what that actually was. But when you go and you look, a lot of these acts are all interlaced, and you have to look at each one of them to figure out what they are and then how they all work together. So this is one of them, and it says this final rule has finalized certain proposals in so doing to advance interoperability and supports the access, exchange, and use of electronic health information. And it also goes back to TEFCA. TEFCA is Trusted Exchange Framework and Common Agreement. All that is just talking about the tech that needs to be used in order to share the information. Lastly, this final rule includes corrections and updates to current regulatory provisions on the Office of National Coordinator for Health Information Technology Health IT Certification Program. So it just goes back to electronic health information sharing. That is just one of the sources. There's another one. Also in the Federal Register, this is a Medicare and Medicaid program. You can also see it's under the Affordable Care Act, but there's that interoperability word again. I had to search this interoperability term and find how many different things were all stemming from that term. So it's a key term. If you want to look into this, you can use that to look into it further. Now, the Cures Act is what all of these acts are actually under, and that gets pretty interesting when I get to that. So we'll cover that one as well. But this one, we're just going to cover so you know what this one is all about. And let's see down here. It just basically says for this whole under interoperability, which goes back to the CARES Act, they have to have all of these different pieces of technology in order to share your information. Essentially, that's all that is. It's just a definition. This, though, is just the title of, this is from the American Hospital Association, title of an article. If you read the article, it talks about it in detail, but this is the Advisor for Cybersecurity and Risk at the American Hospital Association, talking about how these third-party APIs are busy sharing your information and how it's a possible leak. Actually, Change Healthcare, which was associated with United Healthcare, they were the ones handling all their billing. That actually was attacked right before the shooting, right before the assassination of the CEO of United Health. And it had to do with, well, I'm not sure, but there was a lot of missing money because money couldn't be processed. So that is one of the risks that he's talking about here, that all your information could be shared, or even if something goes wrong, that none of your information could be shared. If it needed to be, you know, for things like actually getting your insurance claims paid. I'm going to share this just for a second so you can see that this doesn't come up here. This is just for censorship purposes, just so you can see what I'm dealing with. Later, I actually have, here. I have it on a different tab. Let me find the different tab where it is. Oh. Nope, I don't have it up right now. It is a source that is in there later, so I'll get that later. And we've already covered that article, so we can move on to the next section here. Ransoming your biometrics data. HHS Protect, the real-time database that was used to assign threat risk scores used to deploy countermeasures, such as vaccines and ventilators, has become a permanent program. If the pandemic is over, then why is a military surveillance operation still in effect? Despite enormous pushback from medical professionals and members of Congress, it became mandatory. The DoD and the Department of Homeland Security are ultimately directing the program, and they want their data. So much that financial disincentives were levied against healthcare providers to ensure they get it. If a healthcare provider fails to share required information in a timely manner, they are committing information blocking. Disincentives are leveraged under the Cures Act, which was originally published in 2016. The act is all about fast-tracking the development of drugs and devices, including countermeasures based on monitoring real-world evidence. The law builds on FDA's ongoing work to incorporate the law builds on FDA's ongoing work to incorporate the perspectives of patients into the development of drugs, biological products, and devices in FDA's decision-making process. Cures enhances our ability to modernize clinical trial designs, including the use of real-world evidence and clinical outcome assessments, which will speed the development and review of novel medical products, including medical countermeasures. For a long time in my coding career, I recall hearing about a program called Meaningful Use for Electronic Records. It sounded like the most mundane program ever invented. It only caught my attention because the bigwigs liked to carry on about what an annoyance it was. The program created a lot of busy work spent trying to prove our institution was using the electronic record in a meaningful way, whatever that means. At the time, I had no idea about the financial incentives behind jumping through all those meaningful use hoops. The program dates back as far as 2011. Surprise, surprise! This is where reporting the Z codes for tracking vaccination status pays dividends. All the SDOH codes qualify for meaningful use incentive payments. Codes in this chapter are not just for vaccination status, but for socioeconomic problems. The other really cool trick is that it does not need to be a physician diagnosing anything because the codes do not reflect conditions. Anyone with rights to document can record something in the record that could be reflected with the Z code. It could be a nurse, a social worker, or the ambient listening AI could overhear something you told your family member over the phone while you were waiting for the doctor. That is all it would take for that information to end up in your permanent medical record. Since we are talking about a tracking program that assigns people risk scores based on behavior, it might be a good idea to understand what socioeconomic factors could be reported and used against you. There are codes for noncompliance with medical care, social problems, homelessness, and financial stress. Computer-assisted coding programs can auto-code these SDOH without a human to verify the context. These SDOH code factors are not only monetized, they are required to be reported to HHS Protect. There is also a merit-based incentive program, or MIPS, for surgeons. Much the same as the other programs, surgeons are rewarded handsomely for reporting certain quality measures or data registry measures. That's your virus and cancer tracking. Of course, surgeons that are not directly employed with the hospital network may be subject to value-based purchasing program that is known for bankrupting hospitals if they don't vaccinate their staff. All this should show you what enormous lengths the military medical industrial complex has taken to manipulate the behavior of healthcare providers and institutions. They are motivated to record your sensitive data and essentially encouraged to leak it to as many public-private partners as possible. Does it make more sense now why your doctor asks all kinds of dumb questions about vaccination status, housing situation, and gender identity at every visit? Let's go back through the sources in that section real quick. Some of them are kind of interesting. We've already done those ones. Okay. HHS Protect. This one I keep mentioning, and the website is not very entertaining. I believe I showed this in part 1. And I don't know why that's Tennessee right there. That's just you can't even click on it. It's not interactive, but it shows you there's some sort of map and tracking going on. And there's really nothing that you can click in here. If you go to the links on the right, it just takes you around this document. So you have to go to here, and it says providing pandemic-related data on these portals. So one of the portals that I found is this one. This is the first link that it takes you to. One of them, traveler-based genomic surveillance for SARS-CoV-2. So they are tracking people that are traveling. They're going to use it as an early warning system using variants. And they're going to fill gaps in global genomic surveillance using travelers as sentinels. So if you travel, you should be aware of this. Now, they are saying that how they're getting this data is voluntary. This is all the variants. And there is a traveler-based genomic surveillance program, TGS, which is led by CDC. So this is the same thing. It's just more of HHS Protect. Now, U.S. airports are visited by more than 1 billion travelers. So that's where they're collecting strategic biosurveillance. How it works is people have to take PCR tests and submit it. Voluntarily, they say, samples are shipped to the CDC using PCR testing. I'm not making this up, it says so right there. And then it's sent to the CDC laboratory. And they also have, again, I can't make this up, airplane wastewater sampling program. There's even there's a picture of a guy collecting the wastewater from an airplane so they can take little swabs of it and then send that off to the CDC for PCR testing so that they can track and make sure. Look, if you go through San Francisco, if you go through Boston, apparently they're equipped with this. I don't know how many others, but this is for disease surveillance. Yep. How awesome is that? So this is the Cures Act, 21st Century Cures Act. It says, this proposed rule would implement the provision of the 21st Century Cures Act specifying that a healthcare provider determined by HHS Inspector General to have committed information blocking shall be referred to the appropriate agency and be subject to appropriate disincentives set forth through notice and comment rulemaking. In particular, this rulemaking, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to read the whole thing. You can go back and read it if you want to. But basically, you get fined if you don't share the information. This is from the FDA, on the FDA website, and it talks about real world evidence right there. Real world evidence that comes up all the time because they want to know information in real time, including medical countermeasures. Yep. So this is the FDA saying under the Cures Act, that's what it's about, is collecting information, personal information. So if anyone ever thought that you're going to get a EUA authorized vaccine and somehow that's not going to be shared or you weren't surveilled, think again. There's the FDA telling you right there specifically. And these are their own links here from that citation. If you click that same citation, real world evidence, real world data relating to patient health status and delivery of healthcare routinely collected in a variety of sources. So they're using all this information. This is the FDA saying that. For countermeasures. Get sure that's on the right screen. Yep. Cures Act, MCM, medical countermeasures, check that out. And also, under EUA authority. Oh, that's neat. Yep. So they have special provisions just for that. So just in case you thought no one was being tracked, or maybe got out of it, someone got out of it. Nope. They are very, very carefully. Now here is just a little, some of these sources that I have, I just pulled this out so you can see how much money is behind medical use incentives. So this was all the way back in 2011, and they already had an $18,000 bonus. And then look, there's multiple $40,000 bonuses over multiple years. And this was just in 2016. I'm sure this has gone up since then. And then, of course, there are disincentives where all this money can go away and more if they're not participating in these meaningful use information sharing programs, which includes sharing your vaccination status. Okay, I wanted to just point out real quick, I talk about value-based purchasing program a lot, and I wrote about it in this article. There's a whole section down here about how the value-based purchasing program is still standing. This was an article that I wrote about how the program that I knew about before COVID-19 vaccines were mandated for healthcare workers. There was a flu vaccine policy that was almost the same. They gave the COVID-19 one teeth and made it even harder to get exemptions and stuff. And I knew that there was financial incentives behind everyone getting the flu shot. And these are those incentives. I just recently looked and found that these are still in place, and they are incentivized with meaningful use. So, and the value-based purchasing program as well. So both those programs work in tandem or in different care settings, depending where the doctor is practicing. So if you want to learn about those incentives, you can go to that article cited there, No More Vaccine Mandates for Healthcare Workers. And I wrote that all the way back in 2023, but that information is still 100% still accurate and still going. And one of the things that I wrote about is how that actually controls the behavior of your doctor. So it makes them do things that maybe aren't in your best interest in order to get high scores. And that really is the danger in the programs, is it is a behavior modification that is incentivized. Here's just more of the incentivization. This is Minnesota Department of Health, and they're talking about how to actually get this meaningful use data exchange going, how much money they're going to be able to get from it, and specifically talking about immunization reporting, that's one of the things that they need to have. This HL7 you'll see come up over and over. This is actually one of those APIs that they're talking about for information sharing. This is how your vaccine status is shared in real time from one institution, one database to another. So the moment you get a vaccine, it goes in your electronic record, and this gets shared like instantly. Moving on to the next section. Vaccine passports have transformed into digital ID. The media openly talked about making a vaccine passport system a requirement to re-enter society and for travel. If it were true, AHIMA would be the agency leading the charge because they are the gatekeepers of medical information, similar to a librarian at your local library. In JAHIMA, the agency's peer-reviewed journal, were multiple articles discussing how to share sensitive information with the world. The think tanks decided a passport program would be as simple as downloading an app and receiving a QR code, which could be scanned at a point of entry. AHIMA's job was to ensure the adoption of infrastructure and policies to enable the data sharing. At the G20 summit held in November 2022, World Health leaders, I use that term loosely, schemed to create a digital vaccine passport system based on a criteria set forth by the WHO. It would require the international travelers to have a digital vaccine passport ID on their mobile phone. Along those same lines, an act called the Improving Digital Identity Act was passed in 2020. It was sponsored by Bill Foster. The Patient ID Now Coalition was launched the same year. The coalition is a group of healthcare organizations with the goal of advancing a nationwide strategy to address patient identification. AHIMA is, of course, a member. They are leading the charge, right on cue. There was a COVID-19 coalition which was disbanded after the end of COVID. As mentioned in Part 1, the public-private partnership virus seems to affect these global organizations frequently. Organizations like the COVID-19 coalition tend to be dissolved and reemerge sometime later under a new name. It would appear that the organizations framing the narrative wised up to the growing public rejection of vaccine passports. It is possible the Patient ID Now Coalition is the COVID-19 coalition with a slightly different lineup. From 2020 to 2022, the biggest change in policy and terminology is the switch from using the term vaccine passport to digital ID. The WHO is similarly moving away from calling them vaccine passports and into calling them a digital health certificate. The Improving Digital ID Act continued into at least 2023, and it led to another act called the Match IT Act of 2024. The Match IT Act establishes a minimum data set in which to issue universal digital health certificates. Each patient gets a universal medical record ID, which can be used to identify the patient across institutions and regulatory agencies alike. It is essentially your medical record ID, driver ID, physical address, and email address all in one. The Patient ID Now Coalition was instrumental in passing the law and specifically thanked Bill Foster for his support, the same man who sponsored the original Improving Digital ID Act. Michael Neverdakis of CHD's The Defender recently warned that vaccine passports could be right around the corner. The EU is moving forward with their vaccine passports, and they are tied to bank accounts. As many have warned, vaccine passports are about controlling behavior on a mass scale. In other words, it is a social credit system. If your social media posts get out of line or you go outside your approved geolocation zone, 15-minute city, you could quickly find your privileges are cut off. America doesn't appear to be far behind. Indeed, the HHS Protect program has a section for geolocation monitoring in real time. All the policies around digital ID are under the direction of the Department of Homeland Security and the DoD, supposedly because an unvaccinated person poses a national security threat. Alrighty then, what kind of countermeasures do they intend to throw at us? Let's check out what these vaccine passports are all about. Make sure. This is just an MIT technology review on, there was a pandemic technology project through MIT with the Rockefeller Foundation. And it looks like they had some interesting stuff going on, but you can't actually find, at least I was unable to find where any of these links actually went. They're not clickable. And this is the Wayback Machine. So this is what's been archived, but the COVID tracing tracker. So there were apps around the world, they admit. And then what went wrong with America's 44 million vaccine data system? So kind of interesting. Now, those QR codes that I was telling you about, that AHIMA, this is Wisconsin location. They have different states for each one across America. So this was the Wisconsin chapter, but look, they just come right out and say vaccine passports. This is an opinion piece from AHIMA president featured in The Hill. So this is the AHIMA president who was from the Wisconsin chapter at the time, very pro-vaccine passport. Now, this was in April 2021, But obviously things have moved forward in that direction. If you have had a chance to read Vaccine Impact, they're a great outlet. This is talking specifically about the code. And this article by Leo Hohmann, I might not have pronounced that correctly. This is the most important part, I think, or the most interesting part, because he interviewed a physician. It says, I recently interviewed a fully licensed MD physician who practices in a Midwestern state and has full hospital privileges. This doctor's name will remain anonymous because if it were to get out, he could end up losing his job. On January 12th, he informed me that code Z28310, that's unvaccinated for COVID-19, went live in his state. He said he never noticed it before. He probably wouldn't use it. He says it's non-specific, which I agree with. But here's the rub. The doctor told me he saw one patient's diagnosis code that was specific for refusing the vaccine due to his schizophrenia. A lot of people with schizophrenia are paranoid of shots and different treatments. So his doctors were attributing him as unvaxxed on that basis, the doctor said. So it doesn't take too much of an imagination to see how this system could be abused. What about if you continually refuse your doctor-recommended vaccines? Could you end up being diagnosed with mental illness? The doctor I spoke with agreed that this is not far-fetched. And once you get diagnosed with a mental disorder, you can lose many of your constitutional rights. You essentially become a second-class citizen. You could technically get a diagnosis of schizophrenia from any medical doctor, but usually they will refer you to a psychiatrist, he said. So very interesting information to keep in mind there about how you could get caught up in this dragnet. I have to share this on a different screen. So here is the Improving Digital ID Act of 2020. And I just wanted you to see there is Mr. Foster, there's Bill Foster supporting, and that was actually September 11, 2020. So just interesting date there. And this was the Improving Digital ID Act. This, different one of my sources, Match IT Act of 2024. You can see here, it says sponsored by Mike Kelly. Yes, but there's Mr. Foster again, same guy on this bill. And these two are similar because, actually, let me go back to this one. This one, Digital ID Act, is really kind of scary. All their little points of why we need this. The lack of an easy, affordable, and reliable way for organizations, businesses, and government agencies to identify whether an individual is who they claim to be online creates an attack vector. So it's for cybersecurity, it's for your protection. They want to enforce this because, you know, a cybercrime and your personal information could get out. And trustworthy digital identity solutions could help underbanked and unbanked individuals. So this is going to help you get access to a bank, and this is going to make everything equitable, and it has to be through the government. Yeah, it goes on. There's this high-tech act. There's all these acts that are interconnected. So Certified Health IT Act, that's the high-tech act, and the Match IT Act and the Digital ID Act, they all go together. So you kind of have to read them all and then figure them all out. Well, basically this one, the Match IT Act, is creating a universal medical record number to be used across all regulatory agencies, healthcare and non-healthcare. So that's part of your digital ID vaccine passport. So this is Corey's Diggs. She does great work, and she actually wrote a book on digital IDs and vaccine passports. And she has this section in her summary article about who done it, so who's behind all of this, and I agree. On the surface, the UN created the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which in a nutshell is about using global regulatory structure to combine climate change with the hoax of COVID for the purposes of total control, basically. The World Economic Forum publishes information on the Great Reset. So the Great Reset's behind it. We got the WEF, the UN, governments, central banks, money managers, organization foundations, and NGOs all promoting climate change and COVID as a means to implement their agendas, moving everyone into the fourth industrial revolution of complete digital control and surveillance over all the world and all human beings and all non-human beings. So that's kind of who's behind it. Now, this is the WHO telling you it's not a vaccine passport, it's a digital health certificate network, but it's totally going to be based on COVID-19 vaccination status and your test results, and those are all going to be shared, of course. That's part of your certificate, because you can't travel without that. So definitely talking about how are they going to collect your test information, who are they going to share it with. That's going to be part of your health certificate. So just so we're not mincing words here. Already covered that, already covered Bill Foster. And I think you guys can take my word for that one. So let's move on. I'm just going to close the rest of these tabs because I have way too many open. And totally going to lose my spot. Oops. I'm going to leave that one open. Okay, if I don't. Perfect. Last section, and we're done. It leads to death by drone. Glad you stuck to the end. This is the most important, entertaining, interesting part. Don't think for a second that the narrative about how automating the world with AI will improve efficiency won't apply to absolutely everything. We're not just talking about the cashier at McDonald's or how automated medical coding and billing will impact the industry. We're talking about how automation will apply to military operations for the purposes of national security. Part 1 established geolocation happening in real time without your knowledge or consent for the alleged purposes of contact tracing. In Part 2, we learned those military operations are still in play. Contact tracing was carried out under national security measures. Privacy restrictions have been systematically removed to promote real-time data sharing. The key player is a military intelligence contractor that specializes in AI for total information awareness. Palantir. The major software companies that provide electronic medical record software, Epic, Optum, 3M, and Cerner, are partnered with Palantir directly and indirectly. These are the programs that dutifully track vaccination status and other social determinants of health. It's a matter of national security, they say. So are digital IDs. Palantir has been a longtime partner of the CDC's for COVID vaccine biosurveillance program named HHS Protect. The contract was for Palantir to deliver surveillance software, and the program they produced is called Tiberius. AI software is often only good at one task. Programs are built within a program to handle multiple tasks, much like the movie Inception. It is common operating procedure to enlist multiple programs that work in tandem. The other program utilized in HHS Protect is called Gotham. Tiberius assigns targets a risk score, while Gotham's function is to locate and autonomously decide when to deploy countermeasure attacks. Gotham is also used by police, ICE, and the military for target acquisition in various applications, including for AI-powered kill chains. Gotham enables the autonomous tasking of sensors from drones to satellites based on AI-driven rules or manual inputs for human-in-the-loop control. Palantir received internal pushback over their work with ICE, but it hasn't stopped them. Some have gone so far as to accuse Palantir of enabling crimes against humanity with their tech. Regardless of your position on the immigration issue, the fact remains that if Palantir's AI can be used to target illegal immigrants, it can be used to target anyone for any reason. It could be programmed to target anti-vaxxers or give you a threat risk score based on your social credit. Ethnic groups were disproportionately targeted using Palantir's tech during COVID. The precedent has already been set. Palantir is currently looking to start a consortium to monopolize defense contracts. Gizmodo refers to the partners as the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Palantir only makes the tech. It is the Pentagon that will be using them to target national security threats. It might be time to start asking what kind of behavior makes you a target when the national security threat is a virus. Is it breaking lockdown orders? Or is it failing to pass a PCR test or refusing a vaccine? There is no shortage of controversial projects in Palantir's closet. Let's drag Project Maven out, for example. Project Maven was a Pentagon contract issued with the goal of developing autonomous killer drones. Google was originally awarded the contract, but mass outcry from employees forced Google to back out of the lucrative project. Palantir stepped in and swooped up the contract. Likewise, Palantir's employees had grave ethical concerns about the company's involvement. Unfazed by concerned employees, Palantir's president, Shyam Sankar, described Palantir's Maven as this generation's Manhattan Project. The Manhattan Project brought us the world's first atomic bomb. Similarly, Palantir believes its work developing autonomous killer drones is as important as the race for nukes. And this was all the way back in 2018. Employees of Palantir were even more disturbed over the company's involvement in the Israel and Ukraine wars. This time, disgruntled employees voted with their feet by leaving the company. Palantir's CEO Alex Karp unapologetically expressed his loyalty for Israel when asked how he felt about the employees leaving. He said it is a consequence of maintaining a position. In blue-collar speak, that means get on board or get out. Making killer drones for Israel is the priority. The most alarming issue with the drone assassination tech is that human verification and decision-making have been almost entirely removed. One of the goals of using autonomous killer drones is to avoid spending manpower locating targets and verifying them. Letting the AI make decisions means there will be errors. An acceptable error rate was set at 10%. In medical coding, employees must meet 90% accuracy or face termination. The magic accuracy number is the same for autonomous killer drone programs. The verification process for before hitting the kill switch on the Where's Daddy program was simply to listen for a male voice. An officer reported it took 20 seconds or less per target. Even more regrettably, collateral damage to the Hamas operative's family and bystanders is expected. Allowing the AI to make decisions to kill has led to indiscriminate killing of women and children. Israeli intelligence officers told 972 Mag they were using an autonomous drone assassination program called Lavender. It is an AI-powered kill chain program. Lavender was primarily used to identify Hamas operatives and put them on a kill list. Another program, called Where's Daddy, locates the operative in their home and sends an autonomous drone to their house. Almost exactly how the HHS Protect program uses Tiberius to put the target on the list and Gotham to execute the target. The IDF essentially treated the outputs of the AI machine as if it were a human decision. This was despite knowing that the system makes errors in approximately 10% of cases and is known to occasionally mark individuals who have merely a loose connection to militant groups or no connection at all. Palantir's Alex Karp and Peter Thiel may or may not have provided the autonomous killer drone programs to Israel. The contracts are under seal, but the parallels between Palantir software products and Israel's deadly new tech are suspiciously similar. Turns out, Alex Karp wasn't lying when he said, "Our programs are dangerous, and lives have been taken using our technology." Drone assassination is not new. It has been occurring for over 20 years now. Palantir is just the latest company to jump on the bandwagon. As the tech develops, different features will be explored. Payloads of drones may switch from guided missiles to more sinister payloads. Drones could soon deliver payloads of vaccines, aerosols, and possibly even a swarm of mosquito-like drones. It might sound far-fetched to think of a vaccine delivery drone in healthcare, but there have already been studies on it. It has even been proposed to enlist an internet of drones for hospital supply chains. Meanwhile, Gavi is busy using AI to predict vaccines. Houston Methodist Research Institute partnered with CEPI to design vaccines against viruses with pandemic potential. CEPI is now hard at work on AI-generated vaccine library. Palantir's behavior modeling software that is used in Israel for indiscriminate drone bombing has already been used during military operations to identify targets in America. The threat in America is a possible pandemic, which would become a national security breach. Palantir and the other members of the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse are well entrenched at every level, from the DoD to the entire healthcare industry. AI will be used to generate countermeasures, such as vaccines and antibodies, likely with the same 10% acceptable error rate as the autonomous drones in Israel. Regulatory agencies are likely to justify any collateral damage in the name of national security. Vaccine passports are well underway. They have been rebranded digital IDs, but they come with the same conditions as the dreaded vaccine passport. Conditions will be complete with real-time geolocation, genomic, and socio-behavioral surveillance. Your government and health authorities take this surveillance so seriously, they fine organizations that commit the offense of data blocking. The organizations behind the surveillance software have a track record of using it for indiscriminate murder by drone strike. Time to start asking ourselves how to stay off the kill list, or more importantly, how to avoid becoming collateral damage. Let's start off with this video right here, because this is the most interesting few minutes you are going to get tonight.
Customer pilots directed almost 3,000 precision strikes last year. We're super proud of it. It allows you to separate the bad guys from the good. It's a big deal. But we have something much bigger. Your kids probably have one of these, right? Not quite. Hell of a pilot? No. That skill is all AI. It's flying itself. Its processor can react 100 times faster than a human. The stochastic motion is an anti-sniper feature. Just like any mobile device these days, it has cameras and sensors, and just like your phones and social media apps, it does facial recognition. Inside here is 3 grams of shaped explosive. This is how it works. Did you see that? That little bang is enough to penetrate the skull and destroy the contents. They used to say guns don't kill people. People do. Well, people don't. They get emotional, disobey orders, aim high. Let's watch the weapons make the decisions. Now, trust me, these were all bad guys. Now, that is an airstrike of surgical precision. It's one of a range of products. Trained as a team, they can penetrate buildings, cars, trains, evade people, bullets, pretty much any countermeasure. They cannot be stopped. Now, I said this was big. Why? Because we are thinking big. Watch. A $25 million order now buys this. Enough to kill half a city. The bad half. Nuclear is obsolete.
The video goes on, but yeah, the bad half. So yeah, it leads to killer drone. I kid you not. Now here is, I mentioned some of the medical record programs that are partnered with Palantir. I verified Epic, Optum, 3M, all are. Cerner is another one. Now, almost every hospital that I've worked at across the entire country, all of these companies that are listed here, Epic, Optum, 3M, and Cerner, every single one of those is going to be used in a hospital network. Probably 1 in 4, almost everyone is going to use Epic. If they don't use Epic, Optum is like the next most likely. 3M is going to be used in almost all of them because 3M works with Epic. Optum has their own encoder. And Cerner is another electronic record system that's going to be used in high degree of hospitals across the country. That's in America. Now check this out. Palantir appoints former Cerner boss to cement place in UK health sector. So essentially, this guy is now, who's from Palantir, is now running the UK health sector. So if you think that you're safe in the UK, that your information isn't in Palantir's hands, you guys are dealing with the same thing as we're dealing with in the US, in that your information is in the hands basically of this revolving door of the guy from Palantir, who's now in your regulatory agency in your country. So the revolving door isn't unique to America. This is about the biosurveillance program. This is Palantir in their own mouth telling you that they're working on COVID-19 vaccine distribution. They're partnered with HHS. It's for equity and efficacy. They have to use that equity word. And now this was, I believe, at the end of 2021. Yeah, July 26, 2021. And that was for a year contract. So that went through 2022. And I'm betting that the contract probably had to change after that because the software is already built out. I can't find anything further on this beyond 2022. But I guarantee that they're still working behind the scenes on this tech partnered with hospitals. This is a link for that mentions Tiberius. This actually is, there was originally an article written by Unlimited Hangout that I sourced from Medical Surveillance Part 1, and I mentioned in that they build on that article. This has all of the, so much detailed information on who's behind all of this, some of the organizations behind all of this, some of their motivations. It's a really well-written article, very well sourced. So if you're into checking all of that out, I definitely would recommend the read. It's about, it's a pretty long read, but it's worth it. That's just a definition of what common operating procedure is. So this I wanted to show you because it doesn't come up. This is supposed to be, it says Gotham right here. This is supposed to be Palantir's Gotham program, and it won't come up unless I bring it up separately. A lot of that Palantir stuff ends up like that. Now, Gotham is the AI-powered kill chain, which takes the human out of the loop. very similar, if not the program that they are using in Gaza. And you can just go through and see how, oh, this is a different graphic than they showed before. Kind of demonstrates how they could possibly target different graphics than what I saw before. Interesting. They were just showing screens before. And look, it says global decision making. It's for decision making. So you don't have to make the decision because people don't make good decisions. Machines do, right? That's the whole point of this. Now check this out. Powering the kill chain. Gotham's targeting offers support soldiers an AI-powered kill chain, seamlessly and responsibly integrating target identification and target effector pairing. Operators experienced enhanced situational awareness and effectiveness at Gotham streamlines critical decision-making in the modern battle space. So it's supposed to be making the decisions for you. And then Gotham enables the autonomous tasking of sensors from drones to satellites based on AI-driven rules or manual inputs for human-in-the-loop control. I think they had to write that human-in-the-loop part because of the stuff that's going on in Israel, where the humans basically not really making the decision, but kind of. So that way they don't have to actually, the person who's actually the one hitting the button and saying, yes, go ahead and detonate, they don't have to feel guilty because it's the program that's making the decision and they're just following orders, right? So that's part of where the human in the loop. So yeah, there's still some human in the loop, but they were saying it only took a couple seconds. They don't actually spend a lot of time doing it. They defer to the AI mostly. And that's the whole point of this program, is to defer to the AI. Now, this is a website called No Tech for ICE. And regardless of how you feel on the immigration issue, they do have some interesting information on who is behind Palantir, who's behind some of the tech that ICE uses, which is Palantir. And you can see Alex Karp right there. And then Jeff Bezos also. There's a video on there, which I'm not going to play, but if you can check it out if you want. It actually is very well sourced, I believe. And they do cite crimes against humanity that are being done by ICE for various reasons. And the tech is enabling them to target people. So it may be used right now in a way. I'm going to stay neutral on this topic because I know people are going to be triggered in one way or the other. But the way people are being treated is not legal, and it does constitute crimes against humanity, whichever way you want to look at it. And so this group is pushing for humanitarian efforts, basically. This is Gizmodo calling, there's Alex Karp again, and look, there's Elon Musk, awesome, calling SpaceX, Palantir, and OpenAI that are teaming together to start a consortium. They're going to basically monopolize all these defense contracts, which is where most of them make all of their money, because these are all for-profit companies. And they refer to them as the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. She can't find the actual thing in here right now, but that is what Gizmodo is calling them. I didn't call them that. This is antiwar.com, pretty good source, I believe. And this is talking about how the military is buying these lethal miniature aerial missile systems. So if you think that the U.S. military doesn't have these, they have many of them. They have millions of them. There are some Israeli companies in there making them. That was just one order for them. This is Business Insider talking about a former Google engineer warned that robot weapons could cause accidental mass killings. And this was September 16th, 2019. So this says former Google engineer who resigned from the firm's Project Maven autonomous drone program. It was an autonomous drone program. warned that humanity needs to put international law in place to ban killer robots from warfare before they cause mass atrocities. It said fully autonomous weapons could result in mass atrocities without the right oversight. So there was mass employee outcry that was from an employee. So this might be Business Insider, but it is from an employee saying that. And it says there needs to be legislation in place banning autonomous AI weapons from the battlefield, such as there is for chemical weapons. So they were this was an employee that was highly concerned about Maven specifically, the autonomous killer drone program. This is Palantir saying that they took over Maven defense contract after Google backed out. This is AI News reporting that December 12th, 2019. So Palantir is definitely involved. Here's Business Insider again saying Alex Karp, that's a picture of him from Palantir, that it's Project Maven, the autonomous killer drone, is akin to the nuclear bomb, like the Manhattan Project that brought us the first atomic bomb. Here's an article about Palantir. Alex Karp was interviewed about employees leaving over the contracts with the Ukraine and Israel specifically, and basically said, go after yourself. We're going to do it anyway. There's his response. You can check out those videos and hear it from his own mouth if you'd like. This is 972 Mag, which is a great resource on the Lavender program. It's a really long article, so I won't be reading it or sharing a whole lot of it. But if you want to learn more about how this program worked out, the death and destruction, you can get a feel for it in this. And the military aspect of how the drones were used, they go into depth on that in this article. So it's a great resource. So this article is talking about the difference between Israel's Lavender system and Palantir, and they break it down by like all the little minutia, little details. So if you're really into trying to figure out, is it really them? And well, we don't have the source that actually says that it's Palantir specifically. So is it really Palantir? Or is it some other company? This is the article for you. No one can actually say so because the contracts are under seal, but it makes a pretty good argument that it's Palantir's tech. So this is a letter this was in 2022, and this was the annual letter from the CEO of Palantir. And I want to take you down to section number 3. And it says, most of the largest consumer internet companies in Silicon Valley have built software products whose principal value is that they enable the efficient extraction and monetization of personal information. We are the product for sale, not the software, which itself is often thin. Most understand and have perhaps resigned themselves to this arrangement at this point. Our inner lives are for sale. It is also increasingly clear that the value of such software, which is essentially parasitic and constructed for the purpose of monetizing a host, can be ephemeral and fragile. The construction of a more efficient platform for the distribution of consumer advertising was never our ambition. We have declined to build our business on the back of monetizing data that is not ours and that we do not own. The decision led us to focus on the nature and value of the software itself that we are building rather than what it consumes. The distinction is significant and the source of our alignment with our customers. The value is that our software creates in the world as a result of the software itself, not the information or data of those who use it. So basically he's saying we're not monetizing the people, so we don't actually care about the people. We're being funded by the people running the people, and that's who we care about. That's what that says. So just so you know how long they've been working on drones, this is an article talking about 20 years of it. This is actually from dronewars.net. So they're in depth in studying this, and you can see many different examples over 20 years. They look at all the details, maybe not all the details, but they give a pretty good background on that. This one might actually be my favorite. I believe this is the warzone.com. Now, it says there were drones for 20 years, right? But if you go down here, it talks about the coming swarm of killer drones. A far darker cloud on the horizon. All of these get more sinister as you go through, but this part really struck me. The part about these mechanized dragonflies and mosquito drones. So it says, finally, and the most sinister of all, mosquito, wasp, or even ant-like drones could use their organic pseudo-pedigree in deadly ways, injecting the enemy with poison even while they are fast asleep. What at first would seem like a harmless series of bug bites would soon turn out to be a death sentence. With this insect-like drone technology, there will no longer be a need to blow up a building with a Hellfire missile in order to kill a single high-value target inside. Instead, warfighters could just drop a swarm of mechanical mosquitoes over the building in question and proceed to deal death with microscopic accuracy and finesse. So basically, that's why they're developing these, is that they're really cheap to do. They don't require a human. The human isn't going to change their mind at the last second. So they really will be able to deliver, and they can make them small enough that they can pretty much ensure they're going to hit their target. From what I've learned, the only way to combat that is to have your own swarm of killer drones in defense. Now, I only have the abstract section of, actually, no, I have the full thing. I was going to say, I thought I only had the abstract section of this, but the point isn't how they did the study or the results of the study. The point I wanted to show you here is that they're actually studying vaccine delivery by drones. Now, these drones were not the injectable kind. They're delivering drones to people that would then be injecting, basically trying to get vaccines to different places via drone rather than driving them or flying them in a regular airplane or whatever. But notice how it says equity-based. So everything is about making vaccines equity-based, as if someone doesn't have them that wants them, I guess, which I still can't quite wrap my brain around. They've also done, this might actually be the one that I only have the abstract on. Again, same point. This is Taylor and Francis online, so not like a big peer-reviewed journal or anything, but it is a research article. It is sourced as if it's a peer-reviewed journal, and it says opportunities and challenges of drones and Internet of Drones and healthcare supply chains. So this here is just floating the idea that we need to have a drone delivery system for healthcare. This is from Taylor and Francis online. It's cited as if it's a peer-reviewed journal, although it says cite this article. I've never heard of that as a peer-reviewed journal, honestly, but it does appear to be a peer-reviewed journal, and it is floating the idea of having a Internet of Drones for hospital supply chains. So they're not talking about having the drones inject you directly, but they are floating an Internet of Drones and then running studies on how effective that would be. The idea is already out there. This is, I believe this is CEPI's AI vaccine library. They're making predictions for SARS-CoV-2 based on information they're getting from the GISAID database. Remember how in Medical Surveillance Part 1, I told you that they're getting genomic information, and all of the CLIA certified labs across the nation in America were required to send genomic information to one of two databases. They were supposed to sequence the COVID-19 sample, genomically sequence it, and send it to one of two databases, GISAID being one of them. And check this out. Enabled with data from GISAID. So they really are getting your genomic information from GISAID. They're using that to determine whatever they think the variant of concern is, and they're going to predict vaccines based on that. Exactly what I have been telling you for 4 years. This is CEPI using AI to speed up vaccine development against disease X. Remember, before we knew it was bird flu or measles, it was going to be disease X. There's always going to be a disease X. That's why they have that written in here. So they're just talking about using AI for pandemic preparedness. It all goes back to pandemic preparedness. This is CEPI itself, but CEPI is also working with Gavi on the same thing. So there's kind of an overlap there. And they're just saying, disease X, any disease X, because there's going to be a disease X and we got to beat it. So they're going to create some vaccines. I don't know how that's going to work out. Probably not great. This is Gavi. Pretty much same thing. I just wanted to show you that they're working for the exact same thing. This also looks out, and this is from Evescape. They're citing CEPI, and there's a whole bunch of universities that are behind this as well. And so they're all working in cahoots. Of course, CEPI and Gavi are Bill Gates funded, so no shocker there. And that would be the last of the citations. I'm going to pull chapter 2 here if you're actually following the book online. This is Zowe Smith. You were meant to be free, but you got to claim it.